Assalamualaikum and welcome to the Business Hour here on Unity FM. I'm your host Umar Rashid, and this show is for anyone wanting to know more about any aspect of business. So if you're a business owner, a budding entrepreneur or an employee, then the Business Hour is the platform where guests will share their experiences, expertise on all things business. Now, before we get to our guest, if you would like to know more about the show and wish to get involved or appear on the Business Hour, then please connect or follow me on either LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. My handle on all of those platforms are at Umar Rashid HR. So please do get in touch. Now, today's guest, she is a specialist in employment law, a partner in her award-winning legal firm, an executive board member with the Asian Chamber of Commerce, and also a member of the Employment Law Society, which is part of the Law Society, and that is Neelam Afzal. Neelam, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Umar.
You're a very, very busy person, mashallah, on all of these boards and societies and committees, and partner, mashallah, of your law firm as well. How do you find the time?
I don't. It's long hours, it's weekends, and it's trying to find the time to fit in and my commitment to all the different boards I'm on, and also do my normal day job.
Mashallah, you're selling entrepreneurship here. You're selling, being a strong, independent woman to the audience.
Indeed, it's a tough challenge because the partnership role, sitting on all these boards, you've just got to do the role justice, and I never do things half-heartedly. It's 110%. So
with the boards, is it something that people approach you to say, look, we would like to, we've seen you, we know what you're about, we think you could add value to our board? Or is it you've seen an opportunity and thought, actually I could benefit, or that would be a good move for me? How do these positions come about?
The first board, so there's actually 4 boards in total, but the first, actually all of the boards have been through situations where somebody's approached me to say, look, we've got a position on this board, we think that you could add real value in terms of your legal expertise, and also in terms of commercial strategy as well, and we think actually you'll be a really good fit for it. Do you want to give it a go? So that's where these positions start from. Okay,
you mentioned there your legal expertise. How did you get into becoming a lawyer?
Okay, so I started my degree. So actually even before that, I did my law A-levels in law, and I did something that was called an ILEX course as well to supplement it, and I think ILEX is still out there, and lawyers still use it.
Okay.
And part of this, we used to have this teacher called Mr. Oyemade. I still remember, and he took us to the London Law Courts. So it was a day trip. So we got on this minibus, part of our college group, and we went to London, and it was great to see. We spent only half a day looking at it and spent half of the day in London, but it was great to see the central London law courts and how they operate and see them in action. And I think that's where the fascination for law came. So when I went on to my degree, I had the option of doing law and accountancy, so the typical Asian thing, as they say.
Listen, my dad wanted me to go and be an accountant, so totally get it, yeah.
But I'm so glad that I didn't go down the accountancy route.
Not that we've got anything against accountants, if you're listening. Nothing against you guys.
But we have a lot more interesting stories in employment law. So that's where I went down the legal route because there's a lot more interesting cases. So I wasn't quite sure what area I wanted to do. And then I fell into, so I qualified, did the whole traditional degree, LPC, and I did litigation, so settling litigated cases, 6-figure claims. Went to Sweden on one of the cases, which was great. Worked down in London. And then we had some changes, and I decided to do my master's in employment law, and that's where my love for employment law came. So experienced 12 years, I think qualified 13 years as a lawyer, employment experience over 6-7 years. And that's how I became a lawyer.
Okay, mashallah, interesting. How has the last 12 to 18 months been for you personally with COVID?
It's been it's from two perspectives. It's been a roller coaster from an employment point of view, because as soon as COVID and the lockdown started on the 23rd of March, it was...
I'm impressed you remember the date.
I do. It's that date is just locked in my mind, because we had all these consultation papers, and I think there were so many versions of like the furlough scheme, what lockdown measures meant, what it looked like when we were returning. I think there were schemes that were put in, but then they were scrapped. So there was the scheme where if you retained your employees, the business would benefit from a sum of money. That was scrapped. So there was lots of things that came in, and we had to very quickly, within 24 hours, learn what was being put on paper by the government, turn it around in layman's term, and then explain it to your clients as to what it meant, and write your policies around it and the data and the contracts or whatever you were writing. And it was such a roller coaster from... And it's still although it's calmed down, we're still seeing a lot of changes, and it's about how we implement those changes. So it's been, from an employment point of view, a journey, but also from a personal work front point of view. As a partner, I became a partner. It's been a year now, so that's been a journey in itself. So we've had lots of tribulations, but lots of great moments and down moments as well. But it's, alhamdulillah, it's been fantastic.
You know, I'm going to touch on your partner and, you know, that aspect, and I'm going to be a little bit personal and ask from a, you know, being a Muslim, being a sister, a woman, sort of thing, and what challenges, any barriers, etc. I'm going to tap into that, inshallah, maybe later on into the show. Obviously, through lockdown, we then saw, we had lockdown, a lot of businesses had to close. Eventually, when things opened, there was still that element of, okay, you know, you can work from home. We had the whole joke with Boris about go to work if you can't go to work. If you can't go to work, go to work, you know, work from home, all of that sort of stuff. There's so many memes, so hilarious about it. But there obviously became a period of, okay, work from home. Then eventually that eased off as things eased off. Then it kind of went back to home working. And we're kind of seeing a culture now where hybrid working, home working, etc. It's some businesses have still don't know what to do, how to shift, sort of thing. What in that aspect, firstly from your firm's point of view, how did you adapt? But then also the clients that you serve and you advise, you know, how did they make that transition?
Okay, so going back to the date, the infamous date, 23rd of March, there was a lockdown, so we had to work from home. There was no ifs and buts around this. And I think a lot of businesses, especially of our size, so I think you have to sometimes look at the size, the administration, the resources that are available. And we didn't have the setup. And I mean, what I mean from that is the IT setup, the infrastructure, the access to the servers and data and etc. So when lockdown came, we had to act really quickly to make sure that actually we had the continuity of our business, that we were continuing to serve our clients. And our business is a front-facing business. So in other words, we have a office with front doors and we're open to the public. And that was a bit of a knock-on because obviously that people couldn't come in. So we had to try to go onto platforms with, for example, video calling, any others, Teams. But the difficulty with that was not everybody uses our clients. You know, some of them don't, English isn't their first language. They don't use those kind of things.
Technology, they're probably not the best with.
Yeah, exactly. So again, WhatsApp call. It was one method of communicating with clients. And we had to work out the best methods for us as a business so that we can continue to operate. And that's exactly what we did. So we worked as a team to ensure where we can, we deliver that service. What we also did a bit later on was to set up which was a great idea, was we set up computers in our boardrooms, and they were linked to video links which we had upstairs. So what we could do is actually send a client into a boardroom, So this is when the restrictions started to ease. But we were still concerned about the COVID numbers. So what we would do is send clients into a boardroom. We would be, let's say, upstairs or wherever we were, and we can then have a call with that client, and that computer was all geared up and set up to do that video call.
So could you even be at home?
Yeah.
So the scenario
Yeah.
would be the client comes into your premises, goes into your boardroom, connects on, and you could be at home, or an
Yes.
employee could be at home.
Yep.
Okay.
And then they could leave, for example, in our line of work, we have a lot of documents to sign as well.
Yeah.
So they could leave the documents in reception. The difficulty sometimes was countersigning documents can be done as well, through a video proof method, and obviously identifying, looking at their IDs. So look, I think with all of this, it was a learn for us, and it was a new way of working, and that was the concept. I mean, there, prior to COVID, there were home workers. There was a hybrid. The hybrid isn't a new concept, by the way. Hybrid has been there. It's
True.
just at the forefront now.
And I think what COVID, from my perspective, what COVID has done, and what this whole working from home hybrid done was, previously an employee would have probably been hesitant to have asked, can I work from home because of XYZ?
Yes.
And the company, because they would have known, and they would have known that the company would have said no, and they would have said, look, the reasons why, we just don't have the infrastructure. We can't set up the infrastructure, and to set it up for you as a one-off employee, it's not cost effective. What COVID has done is push those boundaries so much. It's given those people no choice, and businesses no choice to do that. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a business. The mindset's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas before, 12 months before COVID even happened, to even ask, can I work from home 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or permanently from home, and we have no offices. Maybe certain industries, like let's say the tech, they kind of said, look, we always do this. But certain, law firms, accountancy firms, your more professional services ones probably would never have had this concept.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key thing is that businesses have never done it, and they had to do it. So there was just no choice. And where businesses were making a case of, actually, no, we can't do it for this reason, the reasons that are set out in legislation in terms of refusing, it was very clear that they just had to do it. And when they did it, it actually worked. So, for example, there's lots of stats around productivity increased. There's the pros and cons are there as well, but there was data around a better work-life balance. It also meant that they were able to attract talent better. And that's a big issue at the moment as well, which we have experienced ourselves, because when we now have candidates approaching us for roles, one of the key things that's being asked by recruitment agencies and individuals is, what is the work can they do the role? Can they do the role in its entirety from home, or can it be a hybrid where part work from the office, part work from home?
Okay.
So it's put the employers in a position where they've had to do this, but then the employers have seen the benefits, because one of the other benefits, one of many benefits, is that it reduces the overheads of having that person and the office space, because a lot of businesses have given up office spaces.
So I'm glad you just mentioned that, because there's two things I want to mainly tackle on this whole hybrid working from home situation. So you've got two aspects. One, the employee requesting it, the employee requesting to work from home, put a flexible working request in, which we will tackle on shortly. But what I want to tackle on first is what you've just said. Okay, the businesses now have realised, actually, you know what, we don't need lush offices, we don't need this nice setup in a city centre or whatever. You know what, we've realised in the last 6 to 12 months, 18 months, actually, we can save overheads, we can go and work remotely, like you said, we can go and recruit someone at the other side of the country, we can set them up, sort of thing. So if a business has decided to do that, what's the steps that they should take to then say to their employees, who prior to all of this would have been recruited with, this is your base, you're required to come to work, you need to come to work, etc., etc. What's the steps that they need to take, especially where actually there's some people who don't want to work from home. There are some people who say, actually, no, I want to come back into the office. I need to integrate with people. For my mental health, I can't work alone on my home sort of thing. So in those instances, what are the steps that a business should take?
So let's start. There are different ones, because if you've got somebody saying, I want to work from home, so there's lots of scenarios in that scenario. So I want to work from home. Let's say the employer's amenable to that and happy with that. Then what you simply need to do is obviously record it by way of a variation in their contract. So you're recording that change of where they're located from. Straightforward. But there are some other things to think about which a lot of people don't think about. For example, is that employee able to work from home from insurance purposes as well? Because one of the things that I find is some people they have, let's say, rental agreements or tenancy agreements, and tenancy agreements sometimes might exclude them from working from home. Insurance. So this is something that people don't think about. For example,
what insurance should be in place?
So, like, for example, their home insurance might say, we're insuring your property as your residential property, but not to be treated as your place of work. So you have to look at your policy. So, for example, there are sometimes, because what is your place of work and what is your home, you would need to check that you've got the right cover.
So in that instance, would it be reasonable for the employer to say to the employee, update your insurance? If there's an additional cost to it, we'll obviously cover that cost.
In the grand scheme of things, it's a reasonable request. It doesn't mean the employer has to say yes. Because there's nothing that legislates that the employers, there's a must requirement that the employer's got to do that. But in the grand scheme of things, look, it's a sensible approach. If the employer's saving thousands of pounds on office space, and if a variation in the policy is going to cost a couple of £100, it's not.
Yeah, simple enough.
Yeah. And I think it's just a simple check, to check your insurance, to check your tenancy agreement, your rental agreement, that you are permitted to work from home if anything should arise where you have to make a claim, or anything happens at home. So that's a couple of things to check. And obviously from the employer's point of view, you just need to check that your data, your IT, your risk assessments, your policies in relation to hybrid, home working, equipment, data protection, everything like that is all in place. So that's the straightforward scenario. Yeah,
that's the nice scenario where the employee's like, yeah. But we know there's probably going to be the occasional, the odd one or two who, not to be difficult, but legitimately might just say, look, I can't work from home. The broadband's where I work, where I live is not great. I've got kids, I've got pets at home. I'm actually on my own. I actually feel, because of my mental health, coming into the workplace, I can interact with people. How would then employers deal with that scenario?
Well, what businesses need to do is to have a strategy. So I always start with the strategy. What is the strategy for it? So, for example, somebody with mental health issues, it may be that actually that company still has an office. So it depends on, can they accommodate? Now we've got, what we do also have is, even if they haven't got an office, you can actually rent workspaces at a fraction of price. So you've got to, as a business, just think outside of the box and go, okay, well, how can we accommodate this situation by having, for example, a hybrid situation, part work, home, part work, that gives that person that break and being away from home. Can we find, like I said, offices which they can just simply rent at a fraction of the cost? Actually, also going even further, trying to establish what that employee's anxieties might actually be around. What is it that's bothering them from working from home? Is it because they don't have the right space or a quiet space, or they need a break to get out of the home environment? It just really depends on a fact by fact basis. So I would say my advice would be to look at, sit down, and transparency, communication. Early communication is great, rather than the employer just going off and changing things. Is to have a chat and see what what they can do to reach a level playing field and a compromise. And then we have those situations where the employer wants the employee to come back to work, but the employee doesn't, because unfortunately, and we have seen this, where there's been this mindset mentality of, people have not been working for 18 months. Going back to work, it's just like, how? Why?
Why?
Yeah, why? Unfortunately, there has been a shift in this mindset. And I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, because some people have been really eager to get back into business and get back into work. So again, with that kind of scenario, you've got a situation where an employee is saying, I do not want to return. But the employer, what has changed? Nothing's changed. The employer's business has reopened. It's continuing. It needs to continue. I mean, obviously, there are options, we're going to talk about flexible working requests. But there is nothing that has changed to prohibit or prevent the employee going back to work.
Yeah. Just going back to the communication between the employer and the employee. Yes, in an ideal world, we hope that they can come to an amicable solution. What ultimately does the employer have a choice at the end? If they've said, look, here's our business case to work from home, we want you to work from home, we can't get an office that's, let's say they just cannot reach what's an amicable solution. What choices, what options does an employer have then?
Okay, so you see, I would, before I go down sort of any termination, and which is something that ideally shouldn't really happen, the ideal situation, like I said, is to explore everything that's in that scenario, to see, and we haven't had that yet, but I think that it will come. I think the majority of employees have been amenable to working home. I think they've preferred it. And the data that's available is showing that there are actually a larger proportion post-COVID now wanting to work from home.
I personally think that novelty will wear off. I think at the moment, this is just my personal, I think it's flavour of the month. It's convenient, but I think we're creatures of habit. I think there will come a time where we will miss the office environment, we'll miss the whole going back into the corporate life, the city centre life. I'll give you one example, Suits. Imagine them all working from home. It's just not the culture. I don't know, I just think the novelty will wear. Yeah?
We've been doing it for 18 months.
Yeah.
Okay? People still want to do it. I read a really interesting article from a journalist who talks about her experience in the city, who works from home. And some of the key things that she says is, look, I'm actually saving commuting time. I save 2 hours, my journey in, my journey home. So that's 4 hours of commuting time. London has been massively affected by this as well, because obviously London offices are really expensive. Commuting takes quite, some time. So this journalist was talking about, I save a lot of my commuting time. I'm actually at my desk at 9 o'clock. So the story of the journalist is that she can be working at 9 o'clock after dropping her children off, doing what she needs to do, and she works then through her coffees, her breaks. But it means that she's a lot more productive. There's a less pressurized environment sometimes, because sometimes when you're in the office, it's busy, you're interrupted, often you can lose your line of thought. So overall it saves time. It's more beneficial for the employer as well because of productivity. And from an employee point of view, they're able to achieve that balance sometimes as well because of their other commitments. So she can nip off and go and pick up her children from school and come back again and carry on working. So I don't think it's a novelty at all. I think this is around to stay. I think people want it to stay. I'll be honest, as a business, we've all gone back into the office.
Mm-hmm.
We do have one person who does hybrid because they actually live outside of Birmingham. But realistically, we've got to also, and this is a very serious question for us, because to recruit the talent, we are going to have to really seriously think about our strategy about hybrid working, because I think it's certainly something that all businesses, or most businesses, will need to incorporate.
Yeah, no, I don't I don't disagree with that. I'm just looking at just recently, the world's getting back to normal. We've gone to networking events. People have so much talked about it's so great to get back to normal, get back to normal. I just think there will be a time where I don't know. I couldn't picture. See, it's about a mindset thing. Before we had to sit at home. We had to. The government told us you have to stay at home because of COVID. It's a mindset thing. After a while, when it's your own choice and you've got choices, you've got other choices to make. It's not then so simple, and it's not so easy just to constantly sit at home and work from home and be on your own. Just there. I don't know. Be interesting. Be interested to see where the world is in 12 months' time.
I think that's why the concept of hybrid is a big concept now coming into play. Like I said, it was there before, just it's out there now. And also the changes to flexible working. So the government's going through some consultations about changing the way that people request and how flexible working requests are dealt with off the back of COVID and people working at home.
Good stuff, good stuff. You're listening to the Business Hour. I'm your host, Umar Rashid, and today we have our guest today, Neelam Afzal, employment law specialist, giving her overview on home working, hybrid working, flexible working requests. We're now just going to take a short break, and inshallah you will join us after that. Welcome back to the Business Hour with me, Umar Rashid, and today's guest we have Neelam Afzal, employment law specialist. First off the show, she's been talking about her journey into law, how she's a very busybody on many business boards, being a partner in her legal firm as well. And we covered around hybrid working from home from an employer's point of view, where employers have realised actually it's more cost effective, it's more efficient, it's more effective for their employees to work from home. And we talked about how they can approach that sort of communication and consultation that they can do with their staff. What I want to now move on to, Neelam, is, and you may have seen it, where businesses now have been allowed to come back into the office. They've obviously come back to the office and they want to kick off as nothing's changed. They want to go back to things how they were pre-COVID, which is, look, everyone's back in the office, offices are open, we can have guests, clients can come in to visit us, etc., etc. But they then face requests from employees. So employees will then say, look, here's a flexible working request. I've been working from home for the last 12 to 18 months. I just want to carry on. And the business really, other than wanting to just get back to normal, other than just wanting the whole team back to normal sort of thing, maybe just don't want to grant that request. So in that instance, how should an employer approach that?
Okay. So the legal framework is still in place. So there's been no change to that, which is a flexible working request.
Yep.
And without going into all the criteria, the simple thing is that the person has to have 26 weeks service.
Yep.
And has to make that request in writing. Certain things have to be stipulated in that request, and there has to be a meeting, and then the employer gives reasons. So the main reasons that have been set out so the employer can reject it on the following basis. So I think it's helpful for the listeners to listen to the reasons first as well.
Go for it.
Because it sets the context. So extra costs that will damage the business. The work can't be reorganised amongst the other staff. People can't be recruited to do the work. Flexible working will affect the quality and the performance. The business will not be able to meet the customer demands. There's a lack of work to do during the proposed working times that they're suggesting. Let's say it's hours change. And the business is planning to change. The business is planning changes to the workforce. Okay, so those are the reasons, and the difficulty now is that some of those reasons aren't going to fit.
Yep.
Because, for example, and we've seen this already in live cases, but not litigated, i.e. they've not gone to a tribunal for decision, whereby the employee makes the request to work from home, and the employer says, actually, we can't carry the cost of giving you, which is one of the things you talked about in your first half. Problem is COVID has meant that they've done that, they've implemented it, they've already gone through 18 months or 6 months of doing that. So it's going to be a really difficult reason to reject a flexible working request upon. Now, you might have a different scenario to somebody in the hospitality sector, for example. That role has to be performed on site. So an employer can use the reason to say, well, actually, the business will not be able to meet the customer demand, because the customer demand is that you're there to serve the food. So hence that reason will work in that situation, so that will fit. Again, it's case by case. So what the government has recently done is published a consultation paper off the back of these flexible work and COVID. And what they are looking to do is to see if there is, and it's engaging in consultation with everybody, businesses, individuals, to see whether changes need to be made or should be made to the flexible working request legislation. And part of those changes are, and there's quite a few, so one of the key ones is setting a default position. So when an employee starts from day one, they have the right to flexible working. So not where, for example, this is a request. Right now we have a request to make flexible working. It's to have that right from day one. So it's a day one right. Whereas this is, you can only request and you have to wait 26 weeks to make that request. So that's one of the discussions. There are pros and cons of it. The biggest benefit would be that actually you know where you sit with that employee from day one. So you've had that discussion. You know what hours they want to work. You've got it ironed out from the beginning before you enter into that contractual agreement. So it's drafted accordingly.
A listener, a business owner might be thinking, hang on a second, I've just advertised the role. The role clearly states 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, based in the office, bit of travel, etc. We've gone through a whole recruitment process.
Yes.
We've told them, look, any issues with that? No. And now you're saying that there could be a new legislation change that says from day one, okay, I don't want to work those, or I want to change. I want to put a request in that rather than coming to the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week, I want to do it 2 days a week or something like that. You know, in that scenario, are you saying to me that potentially could now happen?
So, like, they are consultation papers,
Yeah.
so it doesn't mean it's in law, but the suggestion is that. However, what you've got in that scenario is this. Let's say, for example, that employee gets a really great super candidate, you know, actually really, really good, ticks all the boxes, massively beneficial to their business. But they can look at actually what is it that's going to work for our business. Like, for example, if they were looking for, let's say, I don't know, an IT specialist, right? Let's say they've advertised Monday to Friday, but actually the candidate they've got is really good and they can work around the fact a 4-day week, or they can change that. That business has benefited from recruiting that candidate. It's not always a case of it depends what the job is, depends what the request is, it depends on what the business is doing. It's based on a fact.
See, those sort of things, I don't disagree, but those sort of things are what you could even do now, because you're still at that pre-recruitment stage, pre-offer stage, you're negotiating, or you're like, look, okay, this is what you can do. What this legislation is potentially saying is that you could do all of that, but come a week later, you can then put a request in to say, actually, you know what, I don't like this, I want to change, and I want to put a request in to do something totally different.
Well, it's not quite a request. It's what the consultation is. It's not a request. It's a given benefit. It's not given where the employee has to agree it, but you don't need to now request it. Look, there's another scenario. So if you flip that scenario, let's say, for example, an employee's applied for a job, and it's set hours. Let's say, for example, but the employee really needs that job, and the employee says, well, right, I'll come on board, but works under the current legislation for 26 weeks, and then puts in a flexible working request. You then have to, as an employer, going through a flexible working request, so having a meeting, looking at what the options are, delivering an outcome, having the right of appeal, right, is burdensome. It's really burdensome, and in a lot of cases, there's always a compromise that's reached, or something is resolved. I mean, yes, okay, applications are rejected, and there's a lot of data around the fact that there's not actually a high percentage of applications rejected, because usually, as we always say, it's a common sense approach to whatever the position is, or the role of the business. So wouldn't it be beneficial, and I'm not lobbying this, I'm just simply putting it out there to say, wouldn't it be beneficial, rather than wait 26 weeks, then have to go through that burdensome process, then to have the risks that might come with that, to say, actually, if you don't agree, potentially you could end up in a tribunal. Wouldn't it be great to have those discussions at the early onset? And you can then make your case at the early onset to say, this is why we're doing this, or actually we can do this. And you've got a happy employee 9 times out of 10. You've got an employer who goes, okay, I'm now getting the best out of this person and their productivity or their work, or they're enthusiastic, they're happy, whereas it might not work in the other scenario, or might be difficult in the other scenario. That's the case that I put forward.
I don't know. I'm probably, if I was lobbying it, I'd probably be lobbying it against.
I think, look, at the moment, like I said, there is a paper that's been released. And
what's the time frame for all of this?
so the consultations, as I understand, have to go back to the government by the 1st of December. So what they'll do, this is the early stages, consultation, then they'll have some the government consultations and discussions, and then decide what the outcome is. So, and that's not the only change. There are other changes potentially being suggested. One of the changes is around, so there are 5 areas. One is that we've just talked about making the right to request working day one right. The second is whether the 8 business reasons, the ones that I've just listed, remain valid. So actually, does the government or legislation need to change any of those reasons? Also, the requirement, so if the employer, let's say, is rejecting, the right requiring the employer to suggest alternatives, because we've never had that before. It was simple decline, right of appeal, but there was no suggestion of any alternatives. Also, the consideration around changing the administrative process. So, for example, they have 3 months to respond by.
Too long.
Is it too long? How do they...
That I do think is too long,
Yeah, so I think, for example, you've got an employee waiting, and it's not probably the best environment whilst they're waiting for all of that. And then the requesting a temporary arrangement. So, it's looking at 5 areas which... within this, that there is consultations to have a look at, does it still work? And this has happened largely because of the pandemic. I don't think we would have possibly have been seeing this so soon. I think we would have seen it at some point. I don't think we would have seen it so soon.
Going back to the original scenario, is it difficult for an employer to reject a request now when the employee could just say, look, I've literally been doing my job at home for the last 12 to 18 months. Why are you saying now it's not possible and you want me in the office?
I think it's because it's not impossible. I always say nothing is impossible. But yes, it's difficult.
It's difficult.
Yeah. And I think that the employer really has to approach where they get a request for flexible working request. And now it could be within, because hybrid will be within the flexible working request, that they need to really carefully approach the delivery of the reasons if they are rejecting, and they need to be genuine reasons, like, for example, somebody who's been working at home competently and serviced everything that they need to do, done everything they need to do, why they couldn't continue that.
The classic scenario is going to be, actually, they haven't been working great from home, but it's never been addressed. It's never been managed. So, for example, you've got an employee A who's been working from home, but the productivity hasn't been great. Whenever the employee rings them, the majority of the time they can't get hold of them, or they've realised that they've just taken the dog out for a walk, or etc., etc. Never really formally mentioned it. They've just allowed it. But now a request has come in. Those are the reasons why. How difficult is it then for the employer to say, well, actually, even though we never said anything then, but these are the reasons why we think it's not going to be feasible or work?
Okay, so this is the very reason around strategy. So if you remember when I spoke at the beginning, and the business strategy has to set out these kind of scenarios. So the starting point, as I said, is always look at your policies, your procedures, what happens in a scenario, how have you set out how you're going to manage somebody's performance. Is somebody's performance measured on them being present in an office, or actually how is it measured when they're at home? Because ideally, if a lot of people are given the tick boxes, if they come in, they're visually seen in the office. So a business has to have strategy around the fact that how do we deal with and measure performance, and there is a whole section, lots of guidance around this, how to approach performance at home. One of the key things in that scenario is the employer's left it, and that's where the problems start always, because it is ignoring what needs to happen, should be addressed in the appropriate way as per their policies, and that often doesn't happen.
9 times out of 10 it's probably left because they're not aware or not thinking that a request for them to carry on working from home was going to come. They're probably thinking, okay, in 2-3 months time everyone's going to be in the office and we can manage them properly then. That's
Yeah.
probably that's from my
I-
personal experience. That's probably why it's not been addressed.
Well, look, that's fine, but I think that if you look at, I mean, for example, one of the reasons to reject an application is the very example, one of the fourth one I read, which was flexible working will affect quality and performance.
Yeah.
Now, for example, let's take my law firm, for example. If we were not delivering the quality of work because we need to be seeing our clients, which is quite often the case, because sometimes there are some clients who don't want to do video, who want to come in and will want to deal with that personal touch of the solicitor sitting opposite them. So that may affect the quality and performance of how that work is being delivered. Again, it depends on what barriers. For example, if you look at a lot of corporate clients, they're quite happy to get on videos, and a lot of city law firms have now moved away from the office space. So I know a lot of law firms have actually closed their offices and just keep it to kind of go in and pop in, but they're all working from home. So I think, not to digress, but it goes back to the point that if you're looking at performance, and that's one way of measuring it, you've got to be able to ensure that you've got your management systems and your processes in place so that you are managing that remote capability process. Train your managers as well to ensure that they know how to monitor the performance and how to manage performance as well. But that's also in relation, that goes hand in hand with also well-being. You know, for example, ensuring that you are communicating, you have clear platforms, you know when you're meeting, have some meetings in the office, some away, so that you've got a good balance so that you can manage those performance issues.
Okay. My last question is around, okay, let's say you've got two employees.
Mm-hmm.
They both do the same job. Two admin stuff, right? Do exactly the same job. There's two of them. One works from home, one works in the office. There's a promotion opportunity. I'm going to guess naturally unconscious bias comes in, and because the employer, the manager, the business owner constantly sees the one employee in the office, the one employee constantly there, the relationship's probably going to be a little bit stronger, because you're going to build stronger relationships, someone face to face than someone remotely. How can employers ensure when it comes to promotion opportunities that they don't discriminate? And let's say in such a scenario, it's a female who works from home because of childcare or whatever, and then you've got the male in the office. And how can employers, A, stop from that potential discrimination and unconscious bias creeping in? And secondly, how could they justify that, okay, if you want to go for this promotion, yes, your current role we can sustain working from home, but your current promotion, if you want a promotion, you then need to come into the office.
Okay, so interesting. It's another big area. And one of the things the pandemic did show was that there was a lot of inequality issues.
Yep.
And one of the key things is around, it's more than likely that women are likely to be either when they were furloughed but working from home because of the whole childcare and homeschooling issues during the lockdown period. Now, obviously, those, let's say, females have gone on to work from home. And what we're saying here is in this kind of scenario, they might miss out because of not being present. And this is about what I talked about earlier, a short while ago, about the present, marking people, giving them the tick because they've just been present as opposed to somebody who isn't. And the ways that businesses need to manage that risk, because potentially it will lead to tribunal claims.
Yep.
And the claims will be under, for example, discrimination. And I won't go into all the subsections for this show, but it will be based on sex, for example. And the ways that businesses need to deal with that risk and manage that risk is this. So they need to identify where these inequalities could occur. So do you remember, again, I talked about strategy. It's making sure that you have in your strategy, in your hybrid strategy, if that's what you're going to do, a section that deals with inclusion and fairness. And what you do is you look at where the inequalities are and you set out a plan as to how to address these so that they don't have a long-term detrimental impact. You also look at, for example, how can you mitigate those risks? How can you, for example, the scenario you've given, for example, the person, the female who's at home and the male that's in the office, managers need to ensure that actually there are lots of platforms of communicating with those female employees, or regardless the employees at home. How often are they meeting? Do you remember I talked about how often do they have team catch-ups, team bonding exercises? And also, as a business, you just need to be aware of, you've got the awareness of those issues. I think the starting point is always awareness, that actually this inequality could cause these problems, and it could cause conflict. How do we train our managers to ensure that that doesn't occur? And again, another thing to think about is perhaps in promotion, when they look at the selection criteria, you're marked on, look at your marking strategy or your criteria strategy when you're looking at certain roles. So I think as an overall, you've got to identify that it causes inequality, but how do we manage that risk?
Yeah. I think overall, it's not in most cases it's not going to be simple. It's not going to be straightforward, but it's key for obviously business owners to think in the sense of it is to have processes in place, but communicate. I think communication is going to be very, very key.
It's like, for example, when we had furlough, and who to pick for furlough and who not to pick for furlough was such an issue, wasn't it? And the concern was, are we going to get a lot of discrimination claims because, hang on, they've just told all the, particular character, let's say males or females, to go home, depending on what it is. We had a lot of conversation, and it was, again, look at what the business needs, look at the structure, look at the role. And it's the same for this as well, to ensure that actually a business identifies how to manage that risk should it arise.
Neelam, thank you. Really, really insightful. I'm sure our listeners would have gained a lot from that. Just before we do wrap up, just a couple of questions that I'm intrigued to see from your viewpoint. As a Muslim, do you inadvertently or in any shape or form, or do you see yourself as a role model to other Muslims, to especially women?
Short answer, yes, but it's been drilled into me as well that you are. So, okay. I'm sure. Does
that put then a little bit of pressure? Do you then start second guessing or second thinking about, should I do this? Should I do that? How is this going to be perceived or not in any way?
Yeah. So I've become very, very aware, particularly as a partner, and obviously with the boards that I sit on, that you have to, I'm not saying I would behave in any other way, but you're setting an example. There's a benchmark, and that benchmark needs to be maintained, because the last thing, because you're in the public eye to some degree. I know it sounds like I'm not a celebrity, but you are in this. I'm very active on social media, so you need to ensure that at all times that standard is always met. And I think, do you know what it is as well? It's professionalism more than anything else. It's to ensure that you are that standard of professionalism is always met.
Do you feel that actually you're also an example to our Muslim sisters, that actually, you know what, put through hard work, graft, you can reach the top? You can, from your, I'm guessing from your legal point of view, you've kind of reached a very high top mark, because you're a partner.
More to go.
Yeah, but you've hit one milestone, which is you mashallah, you're a partner of your legal firm.
Yes, absolutely. Look, without going into a lot of detail, in short, look, it's not that this was something that was handed to me on a plate. Okay, so for those, it's mainly my friends and my family who all know my personal journey in this as well. But to go through university, I actually worked full-time whilst I did my legal practice course. So a full-time job whilst trying to do my qualifications. So I've literally, I would use the word grafted from the age of 16.
Yeah.
And even before that, working the family business, we've always had that, what's the word? Mentality, work ethic. Yeah, work ethic. So we've always done that. So I think when I've reached, pivotal points in my career, for example, my degree, my legal practice course, my qualifying, my solicitor certificate I still have, and my original certificate when I qualified, my master's, then actually building a department, an employment law department from scratch takes, some work. And I've been very strong in my field. So, for example, as an employment solicitor in Birmingham, female as well. And I don't really push that because I look at my skill. It's a milestone, I've come a long way. And then in the last 12 months to become a partner, it's a really key point. So the answer is yes, I am a role model But I'm often reminded, as I said, that, Neelam, you are, because I guess we all have this from time to time. I call it the imposter syndrome. And I'm reminded, do you know what? We all do, but your achievements speak for themselves.
Is it easy or easier for a Muslim woman, sister, to achieve, to get to the top, or do you still think there are barriers, and do you think that still more work needs to be done so that Muslim sisters and other ethnic background people, from the BME community, that they can achieve to the top? Do you think it's better, or still more work needs to be done?
As a lawyer, I would sit on the fence when I'm answering this,
Well,
but you put it as a personal opinion,
Yeah.
and I would say massively difficult. I wouldn't say easier.
Okay.
I would say it's very, very hard, and I'll give you a very simple example. I look at the judiciary, so the employment tribunal judges that are appointed. And I don't say this out of any disrespect for anything, but there's still a lot of lack of diversity. It's self-evident when you look at a list of appointments. Okay. I also think that the difficulty that we have is that we, as Muslims, we have to put a structure around us, mentors, coaches, support, to allow us to kind of get to that point. Education, reading, all of those things that are really instrumental. But in short, there are those biases, subconscious biases, that stop us from achieving the things that we really want sometimes. But I think determination, hard work gets you there.
Okay. Neelam, fantastic. Finally, how can someone reach you? How can people get in touch?
So they can, so I am on LinkedIn. So if you just search for Neelam Afzal, I think employment solicitor, I will come up. On social media, Facebook.
Neelam, thank you very, very much for your input today. It's been very valuable, very knowledgeable. You've been listening to the Business Hour on Unity FM, the only show for all things business. We will continue to have guests either sharing their knowledge and giving value in their specialist subject matter, or business owners sharing their personal business journey and how you can learn from their experiences. If you'd like to get involved, remember you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, searching the handle at Umar Rashid HR. The Business Hour will be back inshallah next Tuesday, 6 o'clock, with another fantastic guest, so please make sure you tune in. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.